Good morning. I want to continue today with part three of my slideshow on it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, the years from 2020 through 2044. And in part three, I'm going to continue looking at some people and countries that were impacted by the April 8th solar eclipse, where Sun, Moon, and Chiron were all exactly conjunct at 19 degrees 24 minutes of Aries, uh, resulting in healing and transcendence for some, but for many, I think this will be a year of wounding. For the population, the world in general, unfortunately, that will probably be the theme. Okay, well, let me see if I can share my screen here. This will take just a second. Okay, and I've got to get rid of a few panels so that I can see what I'm doing as I speak. And let's see if we can enlarge this screen. Go to full screen, and I think we're ready to go with part three of this presentation. So, first person we'll look at is Vladimir Putin. Now, I always have to point out that there's some dispute about Putin's birth data, but the chart that I use here, it's the inner chart of this bi-wheel. This is a chart that most astrologers use, and the birth data has been confirmed by Putin's webmaster, and it seems to work pretty good. So I've got Putin on the inside, and the planets at the time of the solar eclipse on April 8th on the outside. And notice that transiting Sun, Moon, and Chiron, they're all in Putin's sixth house, which has to do with health and occupation. So his health may be wounded uh, to some extent this year. His job security may be wounded to some extent this year. Of course, one of the problems with Putin and Russia is that it's not a very open society. So there can be things going on with Putin that we never hear about. And it's also the case that despite whatever negative transits or aspects we see going on with Putin, his hold on power and his availability to the best medical care can only work in his favor. And so, despite the negative transits, he may be able to endure things. Well, let's get back to these eclipse planets. They were in a sixth house. They were opposite his Saturn, Neptune, and Mercury, and activating some powerful midpoints. In particular, they're in opposition to his Saturn, Neptune midpoint very, very strongly. I think it's about just 6 minutes of arc away from being exact. Now, one of the interesting things about Russia is whenever Saturn and Neptune come into conjunction, they're usually big changes in Russia. In 1917, there was a conjunction that was followed by the Bolshevik Revolution. In 1952, Stalin died following such a conjunction, and there was the subsequent de-Stalinization of the Soviet Union. In 1989, following a conjunction, the Berlin Wall came down, and that is really such a wonderful example because Saturn represents structure, Neptune dissolves structures, and we saw the structure of that wall literally come apart right before our very eyes. And it's interesting that Putin was born with a Saturn Neptune conjunction in his natal chart because when Putin came to power, he changed the direction of Russia again. Uh, with Gorbachev, with the breakup of the Soviet Union, Russia was heading toward trying to become a Western style democracy. But after Putin took power, all of that tended to change. Putin seems to have a desire, both personally and astrologically, to become an old style Russian czar. He's looking to the past. He wants to restore the glory of the old Soviet Union as he perceives it. So, Putin is, in a way, his own conjunction of Saturn and Neptune. And when he took power, he changed the direction of Russia away from what began under the previous Saturn Neptune conjunction in 1989. Okay, so I do expect Vladimir Putin to be impacted by the solar eclipse, to be wounded in some way, to have health problems or problems holding on to his job. Uh, the transits during this eclipse may foreshadow bigger changes that will happen to Russia. The next Saturn Neptune conjunction happens in February of 2026. There's also a very near conjunction, not exact. I think it's going to be in summer of 2025, sometime in 2025. It will last for a while. And so in 2025 and 2026, we may see Russia changing direction again. And there are no astrologers I know of that expect Putin to be in power beyond 2026. Though, like I say, his hold on to power may be strong enough that he can endure these changes, but we shall see. Okay, so again, we're expecting big changes to Russia by February of 2026. And what we see in Putin's chart may be the beginning of the end for him, but we'll just have to wait and see. Now, also, during this eclipse, transiting Uranus and Jupiter, they're conjunct natal Jupiter here, and they're squaring Pluto, the south node, and the midheaven in Putin's natal chart. Uranus is always unexpected events, um, changes and things. It always breaks up the existing pattern. And if we think of Jupiter, the drive toward expansion, as also representing Putin's luck, he may see a change in his luck. And the 10th house has to do with status in society, professional honors, and Uranus is going to be pushing for change there as it squares the midheaven and also squares his 10th house Pluto. Putin has Scorpio rising, which is ruled by Pluto. That's in his 10th house. So he is naturally wound up in this position of great power, but that may be changing. And let's see, the other thing we have going on in this eclipse chart is transiting Neptune square natal Mars. And Mars is in his third house, which has to do with the mind and communication and his thoughts. Neptune can be obsession, it can be misinformation, delusion, fanaticism. So uh, I think Putin will continue to look somewhat unhinged, make a lot of false statements about things, show the world that he has a very distorted perception of reality in some ways, particularly when it comes to Ukraine and Europe and the Western world. So this can stir up his fanaticism, his anger, and also his delusions. So this solar eclipse does not look all that great for Vladimir Putin. Now, here are his transits for 2024. I want to point out the summer months from about May through September. Things don't look too bad for Putin. The blue bars represent good aspects that will be happening. The red bars are usually negative aspects. And he's got some good things going on for him this summer. Saturn, let's see, trine Uranus, Chiron, trine Pluto, Saturn sextile Jupiter. Those will all assist him. But he also has Saturn making a sesquiquadrant to the ascendant. That'll cause some frustration. Chiron in opposition to his Mercury. That is pretty strong June through September. And let's see, that could wound his mind in some way. Uh, so we'll have to see what prevails. He's got more good aspects than negative aspects this summer. That could ameliorate any bad effects that happen. Or maybe something like the Chiron in opposition to Mercury, which will be exact twice this summer, is going to cause some maybe even physical wounding. Now, things may be a little bit more problematic for him in the last 2 months of the year because he has nothing but bad aspects at that time. He has Neptune, square Mars, Neptune sesquiquadrant Venus, and Chiron square his natal Uranus. So times could be a little bit more tense for Putin toward the end of the year. All right, if we look at Ukraine, it's actually not being directly affected by the eclipse planets. Those eclipse planets are down here. It looks like it'd be the fourth house, but actually this is the third house. You can see over here. So that could impact sort of the thoughts of the people in Ukraine, communication. But there's some other things which are going on in Ukraine's chart on the day of this eclipse, which are not related directly to these eclipse planets. He has Pluto. It's going to be conjunct his natal Saturn and opposite natal Chiron. And actually, I need to adjust this first circle a bit. So let me just, let's see if I can, I'm just going to stop sharing for just a second and make this change. So just bear with me here. And let's see. This will take just a second. Oops. Or it may take more than just a second. Okay. I think I'm ready again. So hopefully you can see this okay. So this will be better. Pluto is conjunct Ukraine's Saturn right here. It's in opposition to natal Chiron. The main thing is here is in Ukraine's chart, there's this opposition between Saturn and Chiron. Now, at its best, these two planets integrate with one another, expressing their higher functions. The higher function of Chiron is it's a strive toward transcendence, to go beyond the visible world to the invisible world. It's a joyous light in its best expression. And when this becomes integrated with the function of Saturn, Saturn likes to make things concrete, uh, visible in this world. So, in its best functioning, Ukraine would make this spiritual light concrete in the physical world. And that would be a very good thing. But If we don't get the best expression of that, then we have Saturn representing a lot of restriction and confinement, Chiron, a lot of wounding, and we just go back and forth from one to the other. Okay. Now, the unfortunate thing is that Pluto is going to be activating the Saturn Chiron opposition for the next 3 years. So the next 3 years, 2024, 2025, 2026, they're probably going to be pretty tough for Ukraine. Right now, Pluto is strongly conjunct Saturn, so it's feeling very restricted and very oppressed. And as it moves toward opposition to Chiron, the country will probably experience more wounding. And at the time of this eclipse, we also have transiting Uranus making a square to the natal moon. The moon represents the public, but it's also conjunct the second house axis. The second house has to do with Ukraine's resources. And of course, recently, its support by the United States Congress has been pretty spotty, kind of off on, and there's been a lot of delay in getting the resources from America that it needs to successfully fight its war with Russia. And Pluto conjunct Saturn, that can also signify these delays, these restrictions upon the resources that it needs. Okay, now let's see on the next slide. Here you can see Pluto conjunct Saturn. That is going to be exact about 3 times over the next 2 years, 2024 through 2025. And that is going to be followed by 3 exact oppositions of transiting Pluto to natal Chiron in 2026. So a lot of hard times here for Ukraine. Frustrations and delays, restrictions, followed by wounding. I hope they come out of it okay, but it will be touch and go, I do believe. Okay, now if we take a look at King Charles and how the eclipse is affecting him, well, at the time of this solar eclipse, our eclipse planets were pretty strongly opposite his Mars Pluto midpoint. And this is very telling. If we look at the various interpretations for Chiron, Pluto, Mars, and Pluto, these interpretations stand out. Chiron, wounding, Mars, surgery, Pluto, cancer. And that's exactly what happened. There are, of course, other ways in which something like this could manifest. There are other meanings to these planets, but this one, the surgery, the cancer, the wounding, that certainly occurred. Let's see, we also have transiting Pluto making a strong square to his moon. Pluto is moving retrograde now, so this square will become exact for a second time later this year. And the transiting lunar nodal axis is conjunct his Neptune and Venus. And that is going to intensify some things related to family affairs since Neptune, Venus, it's in the 4th house. We also have transiting Neptune square Uranus and Jupiter. This is interesting. Neptune dissolves structures. It could weaken him in some way. Neptune is also associated with infections, maybe nausea related to chemotherapy or other things. And throughout this entire summer, Neptune is going to be at 29 degrees of Pisces. It's just going to sit there. It's going to make a square to both of these planets. It's just going to sit there. So the summer could be a very serious time for King Charles. and we'll have to keep an eye on exactly what happens. Unfortunately, well, for better or worse, uh, the royal family is usually not forthcoming with a lot of information. They like to keep their lives pretty private and not talk about them until they have to. It's somewhat like Putin and Russia in that uh, sense, though aside from that, there's no other equivalency between the two. Nonetheless, there could be things happening with King Charles that we don't hear about until it becomes absolutely necessary. And let me also point out that the eclipse planets, they're sitting up here in the 10th house for King Charles. So this also affects his status as king. And we know that he has had to pull back from a lot of activities while he undergoes treatment for his cancer. Now, the day that his cancer diagnosis was announced was February 5th. And take a look at the transits on that day. Chiron was in opposition to Neptune and Venus. Venus, transing Venus, was making a square to these two planets. Let's see, down here in his fourth house. And so that transit from Venus was kind of acting as a trigger, but this represents some personal wounding to King Charles and wounding to his family. And it was also activating some midpoints. It was uh, in strong opposition to the Venus Neptune midpoint and to the Saturn Chiron midpoint. So this was pretty serious. And adding to all of this, transing Pluto is an extremely strong square to natal Pluto, just 2 degrees of, or 2 minutes of arc past, sorry, 4 minutes of arc past an exact square. So it wasn't too long before this date that Pluto made an exact square to his Mars. And this also seems to be related to his cancer and the announcement of this cancer diagnosis. And he has transing Saturn on this day in opposition still to his natal Saturn. So this represents a time of restriction for him, a time when maybe past karma uh, arises, some past actions or habits that he has to pay the price for. Okay, I don't want to say that he's done things wrong, but we can do things early in our life that may not be so good for our health, and then later on they come back to haunt us. And then also on this day, transiting Sun was in opposition to natal Pluto, and that too was acting as a trigger. Okay, and so this was the beginning of the wounding for King Charles, and it gets repeated or intensified somewhat at the time of the solar eclipse. Now, if we look at Charles's transits for the rest of the year, what really concerns me are these summer months from June through August, because all we have are negative transits here. There are no good trines or sextiles represented by the bars in blue to help them out. So this summer we'll have Pluto square his natal moon, pretty strong for a couple of months, and it's going to be exact on August 11th. And we have Neptune making those strong squares to Jupiter and Uranus. As I say, Neptune's going to be at 29 degrees of Pisces, just sitting there all summer and squaring this Jupiter Uranus opposition in the natal chart. And those aspects become exact on June 19th, here on June 29th, and July 5th, and July 15th. So it could be a difficult summer in some ways for Charles. There could be some malaise, some condition that's difficult to diagnose, something that makes his thinking or perception very fuzzy, something that weakens his body, an infection possibly. But we'll just have to wait and see and take comfort in the fact that he also has access to excellent medical care. Now, if we look at how Kate was affected at the time of the solar eclipse, pretty strongly, I would say. The eclipse planets were extremely strongly square her sun and her moon, and they were in opposition to her natal Saturn and activating midpoints. And look at this. Uh, Transient Chiron is activating this Mars Pluto midpoint just as it was in the chart of King Charles. And again, Chiron is wounding, Mars is surgery, Pluto, cancer. Same configuration with both King Charles and Princess Kate, and both of them had surgery, both of them diagnosed with cancer. It's quite unfortunate, to say the least. Now, she also has transiting Uranus and Jupiter conjunct Chiron in the 10th house. So, a sudden change in her status as a royal. She's been wounded and is not able to perform her royal duties. And these two planets are also squaring her ascendant. So, this is a sudden change in her personal life as well. Okay, now the good news is that this summer she has a lot of beneficial aspects going on, represented by these bars in blue here. Saturn sextile Chiron, Saturn trine Moon, Saturn sextile Sun. All of those will help her heal and help strengthen her. But I'm a bit worried about the end of the year, though. She has one good aspect, Chiron trine ascendant, but she also has Chiron square Moon and Chiron square Sun. So I'm worried about a bit of relapse in November and December of 2024. The summer is looking pretty good for her. She does have this Chiron in opposition to Saturn here in May, and that resurfaces again in September and October, but still the summer looks more positive than negative. End of the year, I'm more concerned about that. And as I say, we usually don't get information from the British royal family until they have to talk about things, but I certainly hope the best for her and for King Charles. Now, if we take a look at Pope Francis, he was also strongly impacted by that April 8th solar eclipse. Sun, Moon, and Chiron very strongly opposite his natal Mars, so this could weaken his strength and his body. And there were midpoint activations. The Mercury Pluto midpoint is being activated, and his Sun Moon midpoints being activated. So there could be wounding to his power and to his personal vitality. Now, if we look at Pope Francis's transits for 2024, I'm very concerned about the summer because all I see here from June through August is red. No blue bars representing sextiles and trines, just nothing but difficult aspects going on. Of course, the Pope, he's about, I think, about 87 right now. Let's go back. I think he'll turn 88 in December of this year. He's 87 right now. He's pretty old. His health is not great, and the summer could be a difficult one for him. He has Pluto square his midheaven. Uh, that becomes exact in late August. That could represent some change in his status occurring later on this year. He has Pluto making a semi-square to Saturn. That'll be exact on June 25th. That's going to cause some difficulties and frustrations for him. He has Saturn in opposition to Neptune. That will be exact twice this summer and could result in some health problems or infections. Uranus making a semi-square to his ascendant. Sudden change in his well-being, perhaps. Saturn square Chiron. That's not getting super strong this Saturn, but is going to be within 1 degree orb of it, exact in June and July. That could cause some wounding. And transing Uranus making a sesquiquadrate to his Mercury. That is actually going to be in effect July through October, and exact twice, once in July and once in early October. And let me go back to his chart here. Let's see where his Mercury is. Mercury is in the seventh house, conjunct his descendant. That house has to do with relationships with others. And let's see, where is Gemini in this chart? Oh, Gemini rules his 12th. It's on the cusp of his 12th house of hidden enemies, self-undoing, endings to things, final karma. And it's on the way of Virgo, which Mercury also rules on the cusp of his fourth house. I'm sorry, third house. So this has to do with his mind, his middle capacity. So that could be affected by, let's see, Uranus making this sesquiquadrant to his Mercury. So his relationships could be affected during this period, his interactions with others, and he could be coming to the end of his cycle. So I'm very concerned about the health of Pope Francis this summer. And again, we have to just keep an eye on things and wish him well, hope for the best. Okay, and that is going to bring us to the end of, let's see, part 3. So let's see if I can stop sharing my screen here. Okay, and I'm back. So that's the end of this presentation. And part 4, which is going to be my final presentation on these times to come, the best of times and the worst of times. I'll begin with the fall 2024 presidential election in America. We'll talk about that, about what's going on, the general cosmic weather surrounding that. And then we'll look ahead into both good times and bad times that lie ahead for the world and for America in particular. So I hope you join me for that. And for now, I'll just say so long and be well. And I hope to see you again soon. So long.